Well, looks like the neighbor's having car trouble again. All right, Nationals is over and the off season, at least for me, has started because we've got a lot of work to do on this thing. As you can tell, some work has already started. It looks like the Camaro has chicken pox in a few spots. That's because Larry from 20 Square Fab was over. We did some 3D scanning for a project we'll talk about later. In addition to that, the old radiator is out. The new one is, well, sitting in place. And the front suspension, oh, you may have noticed the flares are gone. If you needed a clue as to what we were doing with that 3D scanning. So yeah, we're going to be making a new set of flares for the car at some point. We got the new radiator, that's already here. I've taken the springs off of the suspension. It's actually currently sitting at right height with some jack stands underneath to hold it there, but I wanted to verify a few things, including suspension travel and bump steer. So I'll show you what I did for that. And then really the big project we're going to tackle in this one is I got a new sway bar for the front of the car. So this is a Speedway Motors for a second gen Camaro sway bar. I still need to kind of calculate out the rate, but I'm not too worried about it because it now uses these splined bars. So I can swap out this bar on the car and change my sway bar stiffness. So that's one reason we're doing it. The other reason we're doing it is right here. So this is where the tire has been making gentle contact with the sway bar. So this is a just Detroit speed bar. I did have to modify it a little bit. You know, took the corner off here to clear. Things get kind of tight in here, and we'll address some of that because we're not going to get away with all of it with the new sway bar. But the idea here is to maybe get ourselves a little bit more clearance. That's kind of a bonus point. But the idea is we really want a little bit more adjustability. This front bar, not adjustable. The new bar, I can swap out some center sections and make it softer or stiffer to suit what I need to do. So the goal for at least this video is to verify some suspension stuff. So we're gonna move the suspension through its range of motion, make sure that we've got everything we need. We're gonna do a quick and dirty way to check bump steer, and then we're gonna put the new front sway bar on. So hang out, we'll get that done. All right, so this is my probably wrong, but definitely sketchy rig for checking bump steer. So I've got the suspension currently sitting at right height. There is a laser level that is attached to the rotor, and that's pointed at a board that has a vertical line. I even leveled it in that. This is some high-tech stuff. So there's a vertical line. It's marked every inch just for reference. And that laser is going to track, hopefully, on that line. There are expensive rigs to actually measure out bump steer. Actually, let me stop for a sec. Let's have a learning moment. So if you know what bump steer is, go ahead and skip this part. But when I'm talking about bump steer, I'm talking about the tire towing in. So if you look down from above, does the tire move in or does the tire move out when the suspension moves up and down? Ideally, you don't want any of that because that means the car is steering itself when it hits a bump. So you want to have zero or as close to zero bump steer as you can get away with. So what we're going to do here is we're going to move the suspension up and down through its range of motion. We're going to track that laser on that vertical line, and if it doesn't deviate very much, we probably have zero bump steer, or at least pretty close to zero bump steer. So let's take a look. So there's that line I just mentioned. There's our laser. Here's our suspension. Let's see this in action. All right, we are at right height. Let's go ahead and run this up through compression and see if our laser deviates here, and hopefully nothing collapses with my rig. So we'll move up. There's the kind of the first inch of travel. The laser is still very much on that line. We'll go another inch here. Still on that line, so everything's looking really good in compression right now. So we're gonna move up, and I've just hit the bump stop there, almost another inch, and it's starting to toe in just a little bit. But that's at full compression, so I'm pretty happy with that. So let's bring it back down. It's still following that line. We're back on our vertical line, so everything looks good there. A little bit of a wiggle there, but not anything I'm worried about. Back to right height. Great stop on my part. So let's check Droop, see what it does in Droop. So that's an inch. It's starting to move, toe in, toe in, toe in. It's definitely getting some toe in. So we'll stop there. We're what? 1, 2 inches. This is 2 inches of Droop. It definitely toes in a bit there and kind of continues that trend. So now we're back at right height. Everything still lines up. I think we're doing okay. So on bump or compression, when the suspension moves up, I think we're pretty good. On Droop, it definitely toes in. Some of you out there, I don't think it's a big deal. The toe in on Droop, probably not a big deal, because if that end's drooping, that end's not really gripping up. If you know better than I do, and a lot of you might, say something in the comments. To me, this isn't worth fixing at this point, but I'd love to hear what you think. So now that we've checked that, we're gonna move on and get this new sway bar in. So since the wheel is off, or excuse me, so since the wheel is on this side, I thought I'd show you real fast. So you can see we are definitely making contact if the wear marks weren't enough of an indicator. So that's full lock, well, full lock till it hits something. So hopefully we get a little bit more room with the new sway bar. But again, more room is a bonus. Really, we're after the adjustable rates that swapping that spline bar will give us. All right, so I kind of cheated. I already took the end links off, so we just need to zip this bar out of the way and not drop it on the face. There's also these little adapters for the Detroit speed bar that I need to take out real fast. Yeah, it's the wrong size. Dumbass. Definitely not. Oh, this is dumb. I'm gonna find the right Allen key and then I'll meet you over there. So, sorry about the pole here. Normally I'd lay this stuff out in a better spot, but as you can see, this side of the garage is pretty occupied. You might notice that's the bed cover for my truck. You also might notice that there's no truck. We'll talk about that in an upcoming video. But I wanted to lay out the Detroit Speed Bar and the new Speedway Motors bar and kind of talk about both of them for a sec. So this is our Detroit Speed Bar. It's a stock style front sway bar. I did have to cut a little bit off of each end just so it would clear the coilovers. But you can see this is a big, beefy bar, but it does use these stock style end links. I'm not gonna get rid of this bar. There was nothing necessarily wrong with it. Like I mentioned before, I just wanted the opportunity to have something a little bit more adjustable, but you know, we're gonna test and see what happens. So here is the Speedway Motors setup. So first thing I want to comment on, these arms look aluminum. They are not. These are steel. I did clear coat them because they looked cool and I wanted to keep them looking cool. So I clear coated those. The bar is also steel. That was raw steel, so I did paint that as well. It has adapters for the mounts similar to the Detroit Speed setup. It has rod ends for end links, which is cool. But let me talk about something, at least my experience with this kit so far. So I'm not going to knock Speedway Motors too much. They're actually very helpful to the sport. But they didn't sponsor me for this. They didn't, I mean, I paid full price for this, so I'm going to comment on some issues. Number one, it says right here that I should get 2 1/2-inch jam nuts. There are no 1/2-inch jam nuts, so I had to order jam nuts for this, so that'll have to go in later. And then the other thing is, this is the adapter that goes on your control arm, and I may have to modify this anyway just because I've got a special setup, which is fine, but they give you these little spacer deals that are going to help center. If I do that, you see they'll help center the heim joint because there's some movement there, and they reduce the size of the hole. That's cool. The problem is they don't fit. So they're close, but they don't fit. I did try putting these in the freezer. I didn't try to heat this, but I did try putting these in the freezer. They wouldn't go in. I may try it one more time, heat this, put these in the freezer, see if they'll go together. But worst case, I've got to drill this out. But that kind of sucks, you know? You want, number one, you want all your stuff to show up, and there's that. And then number two, you kind of want stuff to work. So I'm going to go ahead, toss these guys back in the freezer, worry about this later. But we'll go ahead and get the bar on the car. You. Well, that didn't work. We'll let that cool down and drill it out. So I was prepping things and I had to open up this hole here a little bit for the bolt. But one thing I noticed is my tie rod here makes contact with that sway bar tab. I guess it's effectively my steering stop because things are really tight in here, and actually that's a good segue to the next thing we're going to do. So you can see what kind of room I have and don't have to work with. So we'll get things put together and see what kind of issues we run into. Here is that kind of expected issue. You can see I had a notch in this steering arm for the old setup. Sorry, it's a little glary. But it's definitely hitting that new mount there. I'm going to put a bolt in it to simulate the rod end in there, and then we'll put the wheel on and we'll see if we need to trim that down a little bit. I think we might. Alright, so we do have an issue. What I've done is I've gone and put the mount on the other side, and you can see it's making contact with that steering arm right there. But we are not even close on this side, so maybe a little hard to see. But the tire previously has made contact with the frame and the control arm at full lock, and we are miles away from that happening. So I'm going to take some quick measurements, but we may have to rethink these lower mounts. I'm sure if you have a factory Camaro, they will work great. In our situation, maybe not so much. All right, after a bunch of grinding aluminum, I've modified the steering arm here to clear for the sway bar end link bit. With the magic of Kate, I'm going to go ahead and turn this all the way to the right so you can see. Ooh, Kate magic. So there, it actually fits in there pretty nicely. So if I go to the other side, I've marked off the big chunk that's going to come off of this thing. So it looks pretty significant, but these are pretty beefy steering arms. It's still thicker than the thinnest part, and that's what they sent me. So I think we're good to go. So I'll get this one done, and we'll keep moving along. You may have noticed the sway bar arms are on upside down. We'll talk about that later. So I'll be the first to admit that this end link situation is a little wonky, but it actually works. It doesn't go in a bind. This is full compression right now. I'm going to move, well, I'll go ahead and let it run through and let you guys see, but it might just work. And I've got a lot more inboard clearance now, so that's pretty awesome. You can see my little carve work on both of the steering arms there. Still going to put that end link on, but let's watch it go through the range of motion. So that's from full compression all the way to full droop. Looks like it's going to work. I'm going to go ahead and button up the other side and call this good. So here's the point of the whole thing. So I got a tire mounted up, and you can see we have way more clearance at lock to that sway bar. So see it all hiding in there. So I think generally that's a success. Probably need to apologize. I didn't do a very good job of recording an outro for this video. It's been a hard few weeks around here. Unfortunately, we lost Bailey. She's the puggle you've seen in a couple of these videos. She barked not too long ago. She recently celebrated her 16th birthday, and we were happy to do that with her. That's a great run for a dog. But a couple weeks ago, we had to say goodbye. So it's kind of put a damper on things, but we're picking things up. We're moving along. One happy note is I want to congratulate one of my best friends and fellow Team Zip Time member, Andy Thomas. He is your modified front 2020 SCCA Rallycross National Champion. It's incredible. He's worked at this for so long, and if you knew anything about the past year that he's had, or you just know him as a human being, regardless of the year, I don't think anyone deserves this more. So I want to thank you all for following along with this. Sorry this video was a little weird and disjointed at the end. I'm going to have some new stuff coming up, some improvements that we've made to the car, some stuff about trucks, and who knows what else. But thanks for sticking it out. Thanks for tuning in, liking, subscribing, following along, commenting, and just being a part of this build with me and sticking it out. So thanks again. See you guys.